The Zion trade rumors are heating up again. According to an NBA insider, Zion Williamson could be made available if the right trade package is on the table. And if Zion's available, there's going to be a number of NBA teams calling to see what it would take to add Zion to their squad, including the New York Knicks. Today, we're also going to look at potential trade packages the Knicks could offer the Pelicans in a Zion trade. All of this and more today. Let's get started. Apparently, Zion Williamson is available for the right trade package. Now, this was first reported by Chris Haynes from Bleacher Report. According to Chris Haynes, Zion can be had for the right trade package. The former number one overall pick isn't on the market, but he's not untouchable either. Chris Haynes went into this report further with this following statement. Over the last 3 to 4 months, talking to league executives around the NBA, it was made clear that Zion could be made available for the right situation and the right trade package. Not saying he was clearly available, but Zion could be had. Now, this is a major report coming from an NBA insider and Chris Haynes. He's stating that he spoke to league executives around the NBA, and from what he's hearing, Zion is absolutely available, depending on what the trade offer is on the table. Now, if we look at reports going into this year's draft, there were reports linking the Pelicans and Zion in a potential trade for a top pick. Now, nothing happened and a trade didn't come to fruition, but it's interesting to note that there were rumors indicating that the level and value that the Pelicans sought for Zion was a top pick in this year's draft. And they were talking about this year's draft being one of the more loaded drafts in recent memory. So there may be a reason why the Pelicans wanted to trade Zion in this year's draft, because the pieces that you could potentially get in a number 2 or a number 3 pick, Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, and their development and what they could do for your franchise. So that means any trade package you put together for Zion has to be better than Scoot and has to be better than Brandon Miller, because those are the players the Pelicans were targeting in this year's draft. So if you're not going to be able to give the Pelicans a player of that level, it's likely the Pelicans are not going to want to do a trade with any team for Zion. But it is interesting to note that the Pelicans would entertain a Zion Williamson trade depending on who's in that deal. And this is not surprising at all. If you've been following the Zion story with the Pelicans, he's been unhappy there for a while. He's been injured there. He's had issues with the medical staff. He's had issues with David Griffin. He's had issues with a lot of different decisions the Pelicans organizations made over the last few years. So it's no surprise why the Pelicans may be listening to trade offers for Zion, but they're not going to just give Zion away. They're not going to just let him go. Because at the end of the day, whether you like Zion or you hate him, whether you think he's an injury bust or he still has that potential, the fact of the matter is, around the league, Zion and generational talent are still linked. They're still together. And as long as that's the case, Zion and his trade value are always going to be significantly high. So that means the trade package for Zion is going to be significant and expensive. And some teams may not want to pay that expensive cost for trading for a player like Zion, who's missed more games in his career that he started, who's an explosive player, but has injury concerns that affect that explosiveness. He has weight concerns and issues, focus concerns. There have been a number of reports indicating his issues with the Pelicans organization. So if he comes into another organization, he could have the same issues, the same injuries, the same focus concerns, and maybe he has an issue with the new organization that he goes to. So there are a lot of issues and concerns in a potential Zion trade. That's why for me, anytime I look at a Zion trade, I risk and reward it. I weigh it on that scale. For me, any risk you take with Zion has to meet the reward you get for it too. That means in any Zion trade, I am not giving up significant assets to get him, because I have to look at what he's given me. He's given us one good season with the Pelicans. The rest of his career, he's been injured, weight concerns, and focus concerns. You have to put all of that on the table too when you trade for Zion. You can't just trade Zion and generational talent and forget what you've seen over the last few years. I know the Pelicans would want any NBA team looking to trade for Zion to think of it like that. But you can't do that in trades. You have to take everything that player has done over his career and the last few years, put it all together, and then weigh it and see what that value is. And depending on what that value is, that's what you trade that player for. And that's how I look at any trade for Zion. So I would definitely not mortgage the house in a trade for Zion Williamson. But if the trade is right, I would definitely listen and potentially accept it. Let's look at some potential trade scenarios and trade packages the Knicks could offer the Pelicans in a potential Zion Williamson deal. In this particular trade scenario, the New York Knicks would receive Zion and Garrett Temple, and the New Orleans Pelicans would receive Julius Randle and Evan Fournier. Now, this is just one potential trade scenario. I know what you're thinking. I'm crazy, right? Because where are the first round picks? I'm sure there's definitely first round picks in this type of deal to make it work. But now you're asking me, are you crazy, Troy? Why would the Pelicans take back Julius Randle and do you a favor and take Evan Fournier? Well, Fournier is more for salary filler. Julius Randle, why would they take him back? Well, here's the thing. If they believe that Zion is never going to be Zion generational talent level, and they believe that he's going to have more injuries in his future, and no NBA team is giving them back a player that can match that same production they feel he would give the Pelicans when healthy, then Randle would make sense in that regard, because just on a production level, Julius Randle can produce at a high level for a power forward. So in that regard, it does make sense why the Pelicans would potentially swing a trade like this. It also makes sense for the Pelicans to accept this trade if Zion is forcing his way out of New Orleans and is stating openly that he only wants to go to New York. I don't believe the Pelicans would do this deal. However, if they believe they can't get anything better, and if Zion forces his way to New York, this might be the best package that they can get from New York. Let's look at another potential trade package that the Knicks could send to the Pelicans in another Zion Williamson trade. So this one includes Julius Randle, Jericho Sims, and multiple first-round picks, but for only Zion Williamson. Now, I don't know how many picks. I'm assuming 4 or 5 first-round picks in this particular deal, given the players that are going out here. Julius Randle is also part of this trade too, which is very interesting to me, because if I'm a rival GM, and if I'm the Pelicans GM, I don't want Julius Randle, Jericho Sims, or Evan Fournier. I want those first-round picks, but I also want an RJ Barrett, a Quentin Grimes, an Emmanuel Quickley, players like that, players and pieces that still have a high development ceiling and that I can use to build with. Those are the players that I would want. That's why a lot of these trade scenarios that include Julius Randle don't make sense to me. But if you look at it just from a production standpoint, and you think that Zion, when healthy, would give you Randle numbers or better, but Zion, unfortunately, isn't healthy, and you don't think he's ever going to reach that level, then maybe you do this trade if you're the Pelicans, because at least you get that Julius Randle production, and maybe that's what you wanted at the end of the day anyways. You wanted those type of numbers from a player of a Zion type of caliber. I'm not saying Julius Randle is Zion Williamson, but in terms of the production that he puts up, it is all-star level. So maybe that's what the Pelicans would be looking at. But in all honesty and truth, I don't believe the Pelicans would ever accept any one of these trades. They have Brandon Ingram. Why would they need Julius Randle? What does Julius Randle do for the Pelicans team? Besides the elite production and ISO play, what does he give you? Does he make you better? Does he put them into contention for a championship? If the answer to these questions are no, then it's likely that the answer to the trade would be no. There is no way the Pelicans would ever accept a trade offer like this unless they had no better offers on the table, or Zion forced his way out of the Pelicans and made it known that he only wants to go to New York, and New York was only comfortable in giving this package and nothing else. In these specific scenarios, I understand why the Pelicans may accept these trade offers. But look how specific these scenarios have to be in order for the Pelicans to accept them. Right now, we're in none of those scenarios. None of those things exist. So as of right now, any trade for Zion Williamson is likely going to be expensive and cost significant assets. And me personally, I'm not paying and spending significant assets on a player who is injured more than they play the game of basketball. It does not make sense. Risk on reward. It has to make sense for me in that regard. If it doesn't, I'm never doing the trade. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a comment below. Smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knicks fans. Peace.